Good morning. We're not here to talk about dogs or natural history. We're here to talk about the most popular genre on television. And it has been so in this country from the beginning of time. I remember. They are still amongst the best loved shows on television, but every month or so we seem to read an article that says death and doom for the soaps. But as I said, they are the most watched shows week in, week out on all of the channels that they play. So today we're going to just explore this amazing genre, try and understand what brings these millions of people out day in, day out, week in, week out to watch the shows, understand where the characters come from, where the stories come from, sometimes from time to time even from the dead. And we'll ask if the soaps have lost their realism in the fight to keep those millions coming. And as Hollyoak marks its 20th anniversary, EastEnders marks its 30th anniversary, Corrie's going live to mark its 60th anniversary, we ask, what's next for soap? Let's start by looking at some clips from the big four from the last 12 months.
Hello, Phil.
I better call the police.
What? No, I wouldn't. No, what? Call the police about a broken window? They're gonna love you, Ashley.
You're probably right. What were you thinking, coming in here on your own?
You know, it's like an automatic reaction, isn't it? What about you? Are you allowed to come in because you're a bloke?
Let's go back to mine. I could do with a coffee.
Yeah. Don't want Gabby to hear that you're a sexist. Oof. Otherwise, you will never hear the end of it.
Oh.
Listen.
Yeah?
I don't want you to tell Marlon about this.
Why not? He loves you.
Oh, my dad. Because he's as bad, if not worse. My dad's mad.
No. Try not to get upset. Go and clean yourself up. It'll make you feel better.
In a funny sort of way, encapsulated in those four clips is why British soap is the best in the world. You had spectacle, you had the impact of a very long-term story and an intimate knowledge from the audience with character. So congratulations to all of you for those. So I'm joined today by Dominic Treadwell-Collins, Executive Producer of EastEnders on my far right, Kate Oates, a producer who's Soap credentials include The Archers and Coronation Street. He's now running Emmerdale. On my left, Brian Kirkwood, executive producer of Hollyoaks. Next to him, Darren. What can I say about Darren? He's been associated with the soaps for many, many years. I first met him as the archivist on Coronation Street. He knew every single episode that show ever produced backwards. Now, of course, writer for Hollyoaks, writer for The Street, writer for EastEnders, exec producer of Towie, of Made in Chelsea, and the
Housewives of Cheshire.
The Real Housewives of Cheshire. And of course, on my far left, Stuart Blackburn, who is the producer of the granddaddy of them all, Coronation Street. So welcome to you all. Let's first just nail this notion about the ratings, because we do read from time to time when one or other of you takes a dip, or that overall someone works out that there are now 5% viewers less than you had 2 years ago, that the soaps are a dying art. Well, somewhere we should see some charts that point out that the actual decline in the show is pretty modest. In 2010, all the soaps reached 52 million people. 2014, it was 50.6. It's about 1.5 million decline. I think compared to the rest of genre, it isn't particularly alarming. But let's just get the temperature of the room about this, about the extent to which you as professionals feel you are kind of fighting the inevitable decline for the audience. And Dominic, can I start with you?
I think viewing figures are going down across telly, and I think that's a lot of people like to sit down and binge on Netflix. I like to sit and binge on Netflix, but it's a very isolated experience, and I think what the soaps do is create a big national talking point. It creates a sense of community. Everyone, our live week, we had a reach ultimately of 20 million viewers, and it was water cooler telly with everyone talking to each other about what happened. I know that it's going to be exactly the same with Corrie's live in a few weeks' time. And actually, it's very easy to knock the soaps. I think within our telly industry, there's a snobbery about soap. And actually, the viewers keep coming back to us. It's the viewers don't have a snobbery about us at all. I don't see that there's a problem. I see that there's a decline in viewing figures across all telly. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very, very easy to bash us all and put us all against each other. Yep. That's the other thing. Everyone loves saying that we don't like each other and we hate each other and all this. And that's not true at all. I think the problem comes when we're scheduled against each other. Like last night, Emmerdale was scheduled against us, and not both of us. And we've both said that neither of us want that. That's when it gets nasty and ugly, is when the channels pitch us against each other, when actually we should all stick together as a soap. We're all on the same team. We're all telling these amazing stories. And I think soap is... I've been watching soap since I was a kid, and actually in my house, Corrie was always on. My dad was a big Corrie fan. And I watched Hollyoaks, I watched everything. I've watched Emmerdale, and I think we're healthier than we've ever been. When you look back at some of these old episodes that everyone praises now, you go, oh my God, some of the acting is abysmal.
Look, let me put the, as it were, counter case, which is the soaps are as important, in fact, more important today than they've ever been for all of the channels you work for. Yep. There are more episodes per week than there ever used to be. That's been the case for a while now. The pressure on you to keep delivering that scale of audience, because you are more important to the channels than ever before, as the struggle to find the new hits gets harder and harder and harder, they rely on you guys to deliver that sort of foundation for the schedule. So, Stuart, how do you respond to that kind of pressure?
I think, well, for me personally, that pressure should be there anyway. Because of course, we're so vital to the health of ITV and to all the shows around it. But if I'm not going into work every single morning, regardless of those pressures, try to find the most beautiful story arc, the most powerful, moving, funny and wittiest mix, if I'm not going in trying to make sure the actors are protected and looked after and doing their best, if I'm not striving for perfection across every department, regardless, then I need to be sacked. And I think a producer should put that pressure on them and have it anyway, just because of the love. And it's that simple for me. So I don't really feel it. I am conscious of the need to be constantly not taking our audiences for granted, because if you do that, you're a fool as well. And you always want to reach to more and more people because you believe the stories you're telling matter. But yeah, I'm not going to repeat myself. That pressure should be there because of the love of the show that you're on anyway.
Brian, your show has a particular, unlike the others, yours has a particular kind of need in terms of, I mean, it's a young skewing show. It's got to deliver for Channel 4 those 16 to 34s. What does that give you a kind of added pressure, that constant need to keep? Because the problem with young people is they get older, so you've got to keep topping up. Do you feel that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting challenge on Hollyoaks, and I mean, I think all of us are soap fans on the panel, and most of us have worked on, Family Affairs, Coronation Street. We've all worked across the board on most of them. On Hollyoaks, I think what we've found is the formula that works for our audience, and Hollyoaks has reinvented itself over the years from various different iterations. And a few years ago, there was an attempt to kind of make it skinned light, which was actually, I think, a nod back to the original kind of model of Coronation Street. Lots of people sitting around talking, a lot of navel gazing, a lot of kind of state of the nation kind of stuff, and it didn't quite gel with the audience. And so I thought the answer was to make kind of a really efficient soap model. So we absolutely recognise that our audience wants it thick and fast, and our audience research tells us that they love the fact that we're different. We tell stories faster than the other shows. It's not to everyone's taste, but it works for our audience. So we deliver 3 cliffhangers an episode. We've got a faster paced mix of stories. And I think that what we tell is big, glorious soap stories, things that could only happen in Hollyoaks. I think the audience watch that and go, thank God that's not me, with a kind of degree of schadenfreude. Big romantic stories where they go, I wish that was me. And then really truthful stories where they go, that's me. And I think those 3 stories dovetail really nicely for our audience. And, as you say, they've got a very short attention span. And if we deliver that right balance, that right mix, then they come back for more.
Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit about the use of the stunt. And we saw your train crash there. And Emmerdale has been known in its time to pull a stunt or two out of the bag. How important a component is the stunt to this constant, as it were, battle to hold your audience, build your audience?
I think they're important to a certain degree, but ultimately any stunt has to be earned, and it has to be part of a wider story which is character driven, and after that stunt has happened, they're usually only a few seconds or minutes on screen. You've got to have something that carries the audience through for a longer period of time and keeps them engaged. So stunts are fantastic, but they have to be earned. They're also not cheap, and therefore you should use them judiciously as you go through. They shouldn't be part of your everyday fare, I don't think. It's not what makes audiences keep coming back, but it's as a spike or as something different and interesting, then they're really, really valuable. But ultimately, it's all about storylines and driving through with those characters.
Darren, you now help make reality shows as well as being involved in most of the major soaps, but your relationship with soap goes back many, many years, and you've studied and analysed particularly the way Coronation Street has evolved. Yeah. How would you characterise modern soap from, as it were, how it started, how it began?
I think modern soap started in 1983. When Adele Rose on Coronation Street came to a story conference and said, Deirdre is married to Ken, but she could have an affair with Mike. And all the other writers went, an affair? We've never done that before. And I think that is when soaps changed. Because as soon as that happened and it grabbed the nation, by that stage you were getting 25, 27 million viewers every Monday and Wednesday, and every national newspaper jumped upon it because there'd been nothing like it. So it was on the front page of everything, tabloids, broadsheets, the lot. And 2 years later, EastEnders came along. And so you had EastEnders, you had Emmerdale looking at Coronation Street going, that went really well, we'll start doing that. And then it kind of carries on and carries on. And I remember another another story conference. In Coronation Street, we just had the Richard Hillman story, which I don't think would have been possible without the Alan Bradley story in the 80s.
Can anyone remember these stories? Do you want to explain who Alan Bradley was?
Alan Bradley
we might need to know for later.
Okay, for later. Alan Bradley was a character we brought in for Rita Fairclough at the time, and they got together, and he was quite dull, and it was like, what are we going to do with this? He is so dull, so why doesn't he try and kill her? So straight away you've got like a lot of interest in that kind of stuff going on. So if you go a few years later to like now we're going out 4 episodes a week on Corrie, and create Richard Hillman, who is like now a serial killer. So that went down really, really well, you know, driving cars into lakes and nearly drowning actresses. But about 3 months after that, we had a story conference, which was a great normal Coronation Street story conference. We're discussing everything that's going on very, very nicely. And Charles Allen, who was the head of Granada at the time, had come along and was sat next to me. And at the end of it, he said, yes, but who's the next serial killer? And you go, the room went, oh, God, have we got to do one of those every 6 months? And that felt like it was changing because they were ticking the boxes, they were bringing in the viewers, they were getting people talking, and the viewing figures were going up in that. And once the viewing figures go up in that, and they're not going up for when, you know, Rita and Mavis are having a nice chat in the cabin, which is stuff that you love to watch and write, then you go, okay, we're now on a roller coaster and let's enjoy the ride.
So, you know what though, so can I just say, because he's talking about starting in 83, the Archers killed Grace Archer in a fire in the 50s on the day that ITV launched because, you know, the BBC went, I know what'll screw that, and did that, and it did, and it made the papers, and people were going, oh my God, they killed Grace, and it all went mad. So, you know, it's I would argue that it's even before that, because, you know, it's this nature of storytelling has been grabbing audiences forever.
But this idea, I was going to pick up something Darren intimated there, this idea that broadcasters need you to deliver them peaks. They need you to support the schedule at key parts of the year. You are part of, you're as much a part of broadcasting as producers. You have to be responsive to your channel controller is a relatively modern phenomena. Certainly, believe it or not, I used to be responsible for Coronation Street many years ago, and there was very little interest, I have to say, in I mean, as long as the show kind of did okay, nobody much said, you know, can we have an extra episode, or can we... In fact, if Christmas didn't fall on a Monday or a Wednesday, there was no Coronation Street on Christmas Day. I mean, it was that simple. Why would you do anything special?
So that just a sing-song around the old Joanna with Ina Sharples.
So and then we sit there and plan Christmas Day a year ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you guys all did exactly the same thing. You sit there going, okay, that's our Christmas. Let's build to that 6 months a year before. So
now, is this a bad thing or a good? I mean, if you think about, we like to think of the creative process as, you know, someone has this brilliant idea and we try and make it work, and this wonderful script comes in, or this wonderful character idea. But you guys are kind of architects of story, and you have to deliver peaks at a particular point. You have to shape an arc to deliver for the channel. Is that? Hasn't soap given up some territory for that to become a kind of creature of broadcasters?
I mean, we have a lot more points throughout the year. Easter's important to us now. Halloween's now important. We're pushed. We do feel the pressure of the channel to create these peaks. I think so long as you don't get to the stage of Fallon and Aliens, like it was in that. What was that? It was Dynasty or Colby's. If you don't go that heightened, I think so long as you keep everything rooted in truth. Okay, you did that on Hollyoaks, the aliens come. I think so long as everything is rooted in truth, I think the danger is when you're just playing to those viewing figures and you're playing to your channel. And I remember when we talked about Kathy coming back, everyone went, and I went, oh, is this pushing it too much? Is it unbelievable? And actually we stopped and went, no, because Corrie did this story 5 years ago. And actually, Corrie did it with the...
did it about 10 years ago when I was there. I remember when we killed Kim Tate, we'd just shot the scenes of Kim Tate drowning in the lake. The producer was on holiday at the time. The exec walks in the room and goes, I've just had a word with Claire King. She'll give us another couple of years. Can you unkill her? So we did, and we created this whole story. But what we didn't realise, the producer then came back, read the storyline, saw the name Kim Tate, and he went mad. No one had told the producer while he was on holiday that we're bringing back Kim Tate. But it works.
It works.
And with characters that big, the audience will forgive you, I think.
So long as it's real. I mean, because it was the Canoe Man story that actually Corrie had done with Tina McIntyre and with Joe McIntyre years before. We're just seeing the same story from a different point of view. I think so long as it's happened in real life, we've got something else coming up soon that has been taken straight from the papers, and researchers come to us with ideas and go, look at this story, and you say, wow, this actually has happened in real life, we can play it. So long as it's happened in real life, because real life is crazy. Yeah. Real life is crazy. So long as you're rooted in truth.
Can I just, because you've got to pick this point up. On Emmerdale...
Don't take that tone.
I mean, taking Dominic's point about real life, make it truthful, make it real. By and large, people don't come back from the dead and stalk as ghosts in real life, do they?
Well, that was a little bit of fancy, I suppose. You know, Val, I assume that this is obviously the character you're talking about. Charlie Hardwick decided to leave the show. We were obviously planning our big summer. We decided that the best way for our vainest character to go was in a hall of mirrors, which I believe is a soap first. And she was just really well loved, and we planned her exit story very carefully. And it was actually something that the story office pitched to me, that maybe we just had a little moment in Eric Pollard's head where we saw, as many people do, you know, you often hear people say, oh, you know, I see old Bob around the house and I still chat to him and all that kind of thing. And a lot of people do feel that about people that they've loved and lost. So yeah, it was a little bit of whimsy, and you wouldn't do it every day, and it was a break in our house style. And I have to say, when the story office pitched it to me, I went, no, it's just not us. And then I read the storyline, I sort of read it with an open mind, and I really liked it. It won't be part of our daily fare.
I think that bit's of fun. I remember when you were running Enders, and it was Corrie's anniversary. Yeah. Dot, you added a bit where Dot went, I'm just going to go and watch Corrie. And it's little touches like that. You can't do it too much, but little touches like that, the audience like.
I'm interested in this because I'm interested in how far you can push it, because there is... Modern television audiences understand how it works. They know what you guys are up to, and in a sense, there's a little bit of a battle between you and the viewer, isn't it? It's can you surprise the viewer? Yeah. You know, but because we live in a kind of postmodern age, it must be very tempting to sort of to work out how far you can push it, as long as you keep the audience on side.
Yeah, and it's a balancing act, and it's about the mix, and I think you can bring Kathy back from the dead, you can go to the heights that we occasionally do, and admittedly, sometimes it's a very, very, very fine line between far enough and too far, and we have absolutely crossed it from time to time. But, you know, I think these things, you know, I remember there was a dream sequence with Kathy, where Pat was her prison warder. Do you remember that?
No.
That sounds awesome.
Kathy's leaving episode. When Kathy left the first time, it started with a dream, and Pat was her prison warder. So I think from time to time, all of our shows can go a little bit mad, but obviously it's a balancing act.
I think you don't want to be, if it comes from there, it's wrong, it should come from here. Yeah. And you can see, I think you can see in all our shows, if it's too clever, the audience don't like it. It's got to. We all try to be clever and try and subvert expectations.
While I talk, just think about examples where you got it slightly wrong, where in fact you pushed it too far, or the tone didn't work, and you kind of got from your audience that didn't quite. Because I think understanding how you guys operate and where these boundaries are is really interesting.
We did a story, and actually it's the opposite side. We did a story about 18 months ago. That was very serious, and you know, with our kind of serious hat on, about a Nigerian asylum seeker, a gay lad who'd left Nigeria seeking asylum in Britain, and we disappeared so far up our arses we forgot to make it interesting. It was kind of three characters walking around talking, like beating the audience over the head with a pamphlet.
Which audiences hate if they feel they're being lectured, if they feel we're doing an issue, and it's important the soaps do take the issues on and tackle them head on. But if at any point it doesn't feel like those characters are living and breathing and coming from an organic place, then you lose the audience.
I don't think it comes very much. I mean, yeah, issues and whatever, but I think at the heart of it, the heart of soaps, and the heart of the audience is how the audience has bonded over the years with character and what characters mean. And I think sometimes soaps can get it, when soaps get it wrong, is when, and this is I'm speaking as a viewer as well now, is in the death of a character. Sometimes you feel cheated in a way that the person has gone very quickly or in a very different way than you as a viewer wanted. And I think part of that is because you don't want that viewer, that character to go at all. But that's when you sit around, like at Christmas or something, you go and see your family and they go, oh, I was really sad about so-and-so dying. And it just annoyed me. We kept cutting away. It was annoyed me that they, and you go, okay. But I think the issues things can go on and on and on over months, but a death is sudden and tragic.
And we've often had this conversation, and it's again about ratings. You can get a ratings peak by killing off someone shockingly, but then in the long run, you're destroying a loved character, but also you've got a responsibility. We're playing God in a way, and if you give these characters really dismal lives and then in the end they die in a really horrible way, that's a really bad message. That actually you live this life and then in the end you don't get any joy at all and you're impaled on a spike or whatever it's going to be. That's not optimistic. That's not a positive message. We're going to kill someone, one of our characters coming up, and it was all set in stone, and then we suddenly sat down and went, that's horrible. Let's find another way of telling that story, and the characters no longer die.
But the shows are about community, aren't they, as well? The Roy and Hayley story, it wasn't full of stunts or anything like that. It's probably one of the best we've played for a long time. And of course, Hayley's death was tragic, but what shone through towards the end was the love of Roy's friends. All those people around willing him to pull through. So in the end, though the death was tragic, we were left with hope that community, friends, family, they matter, and love matters. So I think you can work your way through it and help the audience through it.
And the idea that that because you're on every week, several times a week, you can tell almost a story in real time. So when The Street did Alzheimer's with Mike Baldwin, that was that was very, very long time. Was that 18 months or something?
It was 18 months. It's quite interesting because when you speak people now about Mike Baldwin's Alzheimer's, they go, oh, it was done very, very quickly. Yeah. And he goes, and no, actually it wasn't. We planned it over 2 years. It was played over 2 years. It's just that it's Alzheimer's and you don't necessarily notice it so much for the first 6 months. Yeah. But it was there and we played it. And I have to say, because I wrote his death, in Ken Barlow's arms on the cobbles in the rain, and for me that was one of the most emotional scripts. Sometimes you just bawl your eyes out when you're writing a script, and that was one of them, because it was somebody I'd grown up with, Mike Baldwin, and Mike Baldwin represented an awful lot of things to me. And when you play something like Alzheimer's, and you might have had family members who are either going through that or have gone through that, when you bring those two things together and you're holding responsibility to do it exactly right as producers or writers, that's an immense responsibility, because every viewer will have a different expectation and a different experience on that particular matter. And so to do it, to give it grace and dignity, but also a lot of heart and love, surrounded by other well-known and well-loved characters, I think that's a good death.
Yeah. Okay, look, I'm going to pause here for a second, because sat in the audience are two stars of our soaps, and I think we're going to bring them on a little bit later, but I'd like them to come up stage now, please, because I think they can add to this session. You hope. I hope. So welcome, please, on stage, Sally Ann Matthews, who plays Jenny Bradley, and Kellie Bright, who plays Linda Carter. Welcome. Hello. Nice to see you. You've been sat there listening to this discussion, and you've been hearing the producers talking about killing people off and and manipulating lives. From the point of view of the actor, how does it feel, Linda?
How does it feel?
How does it feel to? Yeah. How does it, well, no. How does it? How do you? you presumably get a great ownership of your character, and you feel some loyalty to who the part that you joined to play.
Yeah.
And this guy is determining that you should do something maybe sometimes that you feel isn't quite true to you. Do you ever feel that way?
I think one of the most interesting things about working on a soap that is so different to working on anything else is the fact that the character that you're playing is living their life in parallel to you at the same sort of time as you. Anything else, you get a script, you see where your character's journey begins, where it goes, and then where it ends. Whereas this is it's an open-ended book, if you like. So it's a sort of journey of discovery as much for me as it is for Dom, I imagine. I do feel very...
Protective.
Protective is the word of Linda Carter, but I also appreciate that Dom effectively created... Linda came from him. So we very rarely... I don't think there's ever been a moment where I felt that you've got Linda's voice wrong, or that there's been something really underneath it that hasn't... that's jarred enormously with what I've had to play.
But also, well, listen, if you would come up and say, I don't know if she'd react this way. We had this a couple of weeks ago. You went, I don't think she agrees with someone taking tablets, it was.
Yes, it was,
and we listen. And actually, because Kellie now has played Linda for nearly 2 years.
Yeah, nearly 2 years, yeah.
And so actually, Kellie knows Linda better than I do now. So
it's
I
a very
listen.
free relationship. I mean, one of the things I love about it as well is that you feel like, as an actor, that you have a great deal of input into the script and indeed stories if it's a bigger sort of picture. But, you know, Danny and I have gone together before to speak to Alex Lamb about stories and things and said, we're not sure about this. We feel that Linda and Mick would be more like this in this situation. And that is, it's a wonderful thing to be able to do that, because you don't often get that opportunity as an actor, actually.
Do you ever get, Jen, I'm coming to you in a second, do you ever get that, the actor who says, my character would never do this, and it's a sort of non-negotiable discussion? Yes? I've got a nod here. Any more nods? Because I'm going to pick up on any... Can you give me any examples? Or, well, all right, look.
I don't think it's ever non-negotiable, because unless you've got it wrong and they come up and say, my character won't do this, and you go, oh shit, you're right, I'm totally sorry. Yeah. We've got that terribly wrong. You know, unless they've pointed something out, that whether it's a continuity error, you know, that something's been missed out of the archive, or whether it's, you know, an opinion thing, on their character, ultimately there will be some form of negotiation there, because unless you've got it wrong, you've written it for a reason, and a room of writers feels it, and a group of storyliners feels it, and I think there is always room for discussion, and you'll probably get something better as a result. And I think that what you guys are saying is really important, because we are huge teams. You know, we're a tiny, tiny representation of hundreds and hundreds of people who work on these shows, and they work really long hours and really hard, and they love them and they know them really, really well. And if you listen to everybody's voices on them and bring everyone together, and in those discussions, you usually come up with something better. Yeah. And that's part of the process.
Though, in Coronation Street, we had an actor who said, oh, my character wouldn't do this, and so we said, all right, then bye. Because
you're very hard.
this is...
Was it? It's happened on EastEnders as well in the past with other people, I think.
This is someone who's been in the show for 10 years.
What's now? This is very interesting, isn't it? Sally Ann, your history in Coronation Street goes back how many years?
30 years this December.
Now, let me tell you a secret, because Sally Ann was in the show when I first got involved and was exec producer. So that's how many years ago for me as well. Yeah. And you recently, you've been back twice?
I've been back three times. And I'm about to go back.
And you're coming back
at Sally Ann Boomerang. You can't get rid of me. Everybody keeps trying.
But I'm interested in the idea that this character was created 30 years ago by the writers, by you. Is it the same person today?
It's really interesting, because going back this time, people have said to me, did you watch any old episodes to kind of familiarise yourself with the character? No, I absolutely didn't. I think I felt very relaxed, and it was the most stress-free time of doing a job, usually on the first day you're absolutely terrified and you're shaking, I was just much more relaxed and felt more comfortable. And then I thought, well, this is because I played it for 5.5 years. This is the longest character I've ever played. So those elements of you know the character better than other people do is true. And it felt like it was the same person. Am I the same person that I was 25 years ago? No, we're all different. We're all constantly changing. So the idea of picking up and me coming in as a rebellious, feisty teenager, and I'm 45, that wouldn't have gone, that wouldn't have worked, would it?
Stuart, how important do you think is the continuum of soap? There you've got a character that was first seen 30 years ago and is returning. It's a kind of, an extraordinarily, it's more than a novel, isn't it? I mean, it's a series of novels.
One of the joys of Corrie is having that history. I mean, I must say, I want to embarrass you. When we brought Jenny Bradley back for the grieving story and the kidnapping of Kevin's child, it was absolutely a story with an end. There's no possibility of her coming back. But the performances that came on the screen, it was just, we just checked every writer from the first episode that went out because of what Sally Ann was bringing to it. But to have characters like that is just fantastic, because the audience, we've got audience who've been watching the show since its inception. They remember those characters, and it's a huge gift when they know we haven't forgotten them. You've got to be careful. Bringing too many back too often can seem a retrograde and backward-looking thing. But I just feel in such a privileged position to be on a show that has characters like Jenny Bloody Bradley.
And you kind of all do it, don't you? You all play on your history.
But that's the joy of a long-running drama, is you've got this rich history you can dig into. We're bringing back, there's a character called Marcus Christie. He's a little lawyer who messed over Phil Mitchell years ago, and suddenly we're throwing him into a big murder trial that's coming up. And you go, oh, and the old viewers go, it's Marcus Christie. And they know he's got a history with Phil. They know, and there's a fun in that. Also bringing Kathy back. At the moment, I've just been signing off stuff this week. I've got Letitia Dean, Gillian Tailforth, Steve McFadden and Adam Woodgett all sitting in a room acting together, and it's amazing. It's like Avengers Assemble. It's really exciting, and ripping back into that, I think that's, the audience love it, so long as you don't do it too much.
And that's why we give them so many children. That's why everyone's pregnant in soap.
It's true. You always try and knock everyone up, and but with good reason.
You knock them up because you go, no, in 20 years' time you'll need this character. Yes. When David Platt was born and Rosie Webster in 1919, we sat around a conference and go, well, that's the 50th anniversary time, they'll be married. Yeah. That's the wedding.
We do the same thing with Amy Barlow. You can see where that character's going.
Yeah.
And, in my head, I know exactly what the story is 10 years from now.
Can I, this longevity thing really fascinates me. Can I talk to the actors about the extent to which the move of the character to something of yourselves? I know as an actor you draw on yourself, that's part of the craft, but to what degree are you able to resist, as it were, becoming who you are rather than playing the character?
For me, I think every actor approaches a role differently,
Yeah.
so what works for one person won't work for somebody else. For me, I very much like putting Linda Carter on, and I like taking her off. And that keeps me sane, it keeps my personal life very personal. I feel like, my professional life is what it is, and when I leave that studio, when I go home, I have a completely different hat on, and I like that. I also, for me, when I'm playing Linda Carter and I have her on, I always feel like that when I have her on, for me, it makes me feel safe as an actor, actually. I don't feel as exposed. I have a freedom then to be something that I am not sometimes. Yeah. So that really helps me as an actor. But like I say, every actor's different, so everyone has a different process.
And Sally Ann, is it the same for you?
I think it entirely depends on the character, the initial character. Linda is, she's got the hair, she's got the pink, she's got the whole thing going on. So I think it depends how extreme or large or small your character is. And then there'll be lots of times as well when casting these days, and I've done Emmerdale, and I've done E20. I've never done Hollyoaks, but I've been up for it lots of times. So now casting directors, they go, well, we're looking for, she's got to be northern, she's got to be feisty, they've got a redhead. Right, we'll have Sally Ann Matthews then, get her in. And so now you can go as an actor, casting directors these days and everybody else, if you want to find, a 5'2", 36 seed Virgo open act, you get one because there's hundreds of them, and you're not allowed to be, slightly different these days than the character requirement.
It's partly a challenge of soap, particularly I think with, I would say, EastEnders and Corrie, who, in a sense, are the most kind of, in my view, rooted in the everydayness. Everydayness is a really important characteristic of the shows, isn't it? It has to feel like that community. You could walk onto Albert Square and actually chat to these people, and just feel that real. That, in a sense, as an actor, you're so close to, as it were, the rhythms of everyday life. Do you feel that?
I'm not entirely sure what...
Well, I think what I'm getting at is that part of the authenticity of the show comes from, as it were, the reality of the characters.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think even if you've got... Look, it's like Dom said earlier, if you look around you in real life, the people that you meet, that you've met throughout your lifetime, some of them have been unbelievably larger than life, and you think, my goodness, if I based as an actor, you think, if I based a character on you, people would laugh at me, people would think this is ridiculous. But there are people out there that are like that, just as there are people out there that are very, withdrawn and the opposite end of that. And so you've got a huge scope to create reality. You really, really do. And you need everything in there, really, to sort of show everything, to create that world. You can't, if everybody was the same, it wouldn't be interesting to watch. Because people aren't the same in real life, are they?
I think what's quite interesting what you were saying about the normality and real life, and people used to say, oh, well, they're just being themselves, and actually being normal as an actor and making a cup of tea on set, you kind of go, hang on, what do I do? I do this without thinking, but when you have to think and you have to be in that position when you put the kettle on and you have to get the milk from there and don't make a noise, and all of a sudden the mundane, normal tasks actually become slightly more complicated. So the ability to use props and do normal everyday things is actually a great skill, and I think a lot of audiences just go, oh, they're just being themselves. Anybody can do that, but you say, right, anybody go and sweep the floor and say lines at the same time, and they go, I can't do that. So that normality, I think, it's a real skill, and it's something that people who work in soaps have to have that because of the speed. You can't go again, and doing normal things well is actually...
When any new character comes onto EastEnders, we have a character session where we ask the actor to put a little bit of themselves into the character, and we talk away about the character for a couple of hours. But we also talk about what they'll order in the Vic, what's on their iPod, little things like that make the character add that extra dimension to it all. And I think it grounds them and keeps them real. And Linda Carter can have her big hair and her big pink fluffiness, and then suddenly
she has no makeup on and a tracksuit in another.
And we know what she drinks.
On another day.
We know what she listens. We know what she likes. She likes to watch Strictly. We always
she
say.
does like. She has Strictly parties. Linda Carter.
Not this
Strictly
year.
Parties.
That's too self-referential.
I know, yeah. Not this.
Let's just go back to, as it were, all these shows came from. Stuart, how conscious are you of the template that Tony Warren laid down nearly 60 years ago?
Massively, and there are times when we're having either stories that are working really well, I'll just rein myself back in a little bit and kind of think about that original version of the show. I do ask myself, what would Tony Warren do if he'd started the show now and he had this story? I talk to him, we have meetings every 6-7 weeks, he's still as on the ball now as he ever was, and he will let me know if he doesn't believe it. But for me, there was this, when I got the job, there was a simplicity for me. This is a story about the life, loves, ambitions, trials and romances of a working class community in Manchester. It was then and it still is. And that simplicity for me really works.
And does it matter that or maybe it reflects it, that the working class community that it was based on and that kind of lifestyle has changed radically in 60 years?
It has changed radically.
But
And I think the show's, as best it can, look, there's probably very few streets with cobbles left on them. Those cobbles will be there forever. That's a given. But I think in terms of the way people, the characters live their lives, in terms of the nature of families now, in terms of the diversity of the cast that we're building towards, I think it represents now, whilst still retaining the honesty of what Tony created.
Now, your show is probably furthest from its roots than any of the other shows in terms of what it's become compared to. I suspect many people who don't remember how Emmerdale. It was very much.
People still call it Emmerdale Farm when they want to annoy me.
It was Emmerdale Farm. It was very much about.
He does do it. Yeah, can you have a word?
About a farming community. There was, a lot of sheep shearing and the like in it. It was a little bit more Archers than it is today.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, I guess the route you would not see that route as particularly helpful today, do you?
Well, I think that there are certain things that are still important to the show that were important then. I think that our setting is a USP for us. Whenever I'm on set, on location, and I'm in that village, it is beautiful, and that is unique to us and really worth celebrating. It gives us a great amount of freedom in terms of just the range of shots that we can use and that beautiful Yorkshire countryside, and that's amazing, and I'd never want to take that away. And similarly, when we do kind of have stuff that's on the working farm, and we've got all the boys in their boiler suits and they're with the cows or the sheep or whatever, that's unique to us, and I really, really like it. So I think that is really important. The tone of our storytelling has changed. The kinds of stories that we tell has changed radically. The kind of cast that we have has changed radically. And I think rightly so. There have been certain landmarks in Emmerdale's history where it made that very conscious decision to change, the plane crash being a big one. And I think sort of over the last 8 years probably, its evolution has continued at quite a pace, and I think that's right. I think that it's given us the freedom to tell a real wide range of storylines, actually. Sometimes Emmerdale storylines can be very rooted in the everyday, whether it's the Laurel's alcoholism story there, which is something a lot of people can relate to, whether it is something on the farm and it's true to our setting, or whether it's something much more heightened. As long as we've got the balance right within not just singular episodes, but sort of spectrums of time, but broader spectrums of time, then I think that we can that's what works best for the show, and that evolution's actually been the reason it's still on television. Because I think if it was truer to its original roots, it probably wouldn't have lasted.
And your route, are you conscious that you've got a route? You've got a kind of core set of rules about what makes your show different, or? Yeah,
and I think, as I said earlier, Hollyoaks has adapted over the years, and it was created to be a British answer to Neighbours and Home and Away, and it tanked. That first version of it didn't succeed, probably because it was filmed in Liverpool and not Sydney. That might have something to do with it. But so I think there was an immediate effort to make it a bit larger. There was an ecstasy-fueled death, and I think that's when the show got traction. That's when it engaged with its audience, and it applied the kind of Brookside grit onto home and away beauty. And I think that combination stuck. And again, it's kind of adapted over the years, but that's the version that I think works the best.
There was I remember a huge fuss around a male rape, wasn't there, with Gary Lucy, I think, the actor. And I think the show was played later in the evening, wasn't it? It was taken out of its slot.
That's right. Yeah. That was. Sorry.
No, well, I'm interested in that because you've told another story more recently, which has a gay rape in it, and that played at 6:30.
That's right. Yeah. The initial story was the launch story for Hollyoaks Late Night. Which has again adapted over the years. The last one we did was 18 months ago, now called Hollyoaks Later. And dare I say, that was a big, splashy, sensational statement of intent. Come to Hollyoaks Later at 10:30 and see things you can't see at 6:30. Whereas the story we told 18 months ago is the thing I'm most proud of in my career, because I was determined to tell it at 6:30 in a way that some people told me we couldn't. A story I felt passionate about for many years, and in fact Darren and I, when I was at EastEnders, we wanted to tell it at EastEnders, and we were told in no uncertain terms we couldn't. So fast forward a few years, I'm at Hollyoaks, and I felt really passionately that almost the rape of female characters has become a soap staple over the years, and yet male rape or the sexual abuse of men isn't a conversation people have ever. and learning, and what the reason this story worked so well, I think, is because it became a story about the community. There were stakes in every single clan. There was the mother of the rapist, her story, the family, the friendships, the suspects, and it worked tremendously, and it also helped. We worked with Survivors Manchester, the Manchester-based sexual assault advisory service, and they think it changed the conversation. They can now have a conversation with taxi drivers about male rape in a way that they couldn't 2 years ago. So I'm very proud of it.
Are there no-go areas? Are there areas you think where your bosses would say, we can't tell that story?
I think, I remember the last time I was at EastEnders, we were developing Christian and Saeed. We did this Muslim love story, gay Muslim love story. And everyone got very, very, very nervous. And therefore we decided this is all the more reason to tell the story, so long as it is properly researched and it's told. It's a love story and it's about character. So long as it's from character and it's properly researched, you're fine. I don't think there are many new taboos to tell. I think there's necrophilia. You can't go there. I don't think there's many other things you can tell. I was told not to say that. So I think we've told a lot of the stories. It's finding new ways to tell them. I think it'd be silly if we start trying to push it too far anymore. I think it's going back to your initial thing, that there's a point where you don't want to suspend. You want to suspend disbelief, but you don't want to push it too far.
I think you could some research. Media studies researcher could do some work, and maybe they've done it, tracking, as it were, the breaking off the taboos through this history of British soap. It would be actually quite interesting to follow that.
Celebrate, I think, often because like with the male rape, we can help conversations, and all the soaps have over the years begin that were hidden and buried. And I think when we have done, and when it hasn't been gratuitous, and that wasn't in any way, then we should stand up and be really, really proud of ourselves.
But the flip side is you can show a gay kiss still, and get some bile in my inbox the next day.
Oh yeah, the most complaints we get are for gay kisses still.
We've got to round up, and I'd just be keen to, if you all to think about where you think we're going to be in kind of 5 or 6 years' time. In particular, Dominic, this issue about the need to, as it were, reflect back the world as it is, and the communities as they are changing, and Britain is changing constantly, probably more rapidly than ever. To what degree do you think the show needs to continue to evolve and change in order to better reflect Britain today in the East End?
I think we're one of the most diverse shows in front of the camera and behind camera on telly, and we're going to keep doing that. I spoke a few months ago about the fact that if these things are imposed on you, if you're told you must have this many Asian characters, this many black characters, and 3 disabled people and a gay, that's wrong. Everything's got to come from character. We're aware of it all. We're aware of diversity, and we're all above all these quotas, actually. It's about, as Lenny Henry said, viewers should be able to see themselves on the television. Everyone should be able to see a character that's them.
I wanted to say that the character, the key, I think, to any actor in creating a character is, and why people want to watch soaps is that because they can relate to those people in them. And if they can't relate to you in some way, whether it's just a share of, I love her earrings, or I think that about that, or that's the key to it. That is the key to creating our worlds that we all, with what we've done.
And it's great. It creates a show that's much more interesting. Otherwise, it's bland. And I think all these other shows, all these other genres come and go. And soap it stays because it's about life.
So do you think in 15 years' time, 10 years' time, we'll be watching EastEnders and it'll feel pretty much the way it feels today?
I think it will have evolved a bit, but I think it'll still be around. I think we'll all still be around in 15 years' time.
Yeah, I think, again, it's just about making sure that you evolve with people's changing tastes, their higher expectations of the production values that they see, the pace of storytelling. Obviously, you were talking about Netflix and box sets and all that kind of thing. People's everyday fare has changed and you have to keep up with that. But it's things like Twitter and social media and stuff that has a huge impact as well. I mean, we've just kept a character's not to death a secret. We tricked the audience into thinking that we'd killed one of our top characters, and we had to have a real word with all the experts about how much they use Twitter, and also the people who stand outside the gates kind of seeing him come in, and things like that can really spoil a story. So over the next sort of few years, I think that will be one of the big things and one of the big challenges for soap, making that work for us.
Okay. What about Corrie? Is that
I'm incredibly optimistic.
we know the cobbles are going to be there in 15 years.
Yeah,
but,
look, tastes change and styles of storytelling change. But from the first man and woman who walked the earth, we've been storytelling, sitting around the campfire, telling each other tales, some of them bollocks, frankly, some of them truthful and moving. We'll be doing that in 50, 100, 150 years, and that's what the soaps do. We sit our audiences
Brian,
around the campfire.
in 10 years' time, how big will the stunts be on Hollyoaks? Do you think?
We haven't done a meteorite yet.
And Sally-Ann, what hopes have you got for Jenny? Is she? Would you like to stay in the show?
Yeah, like a job. It's been very interesting for me to have been in my first ever job. I was 15, doing Corrie, you were my boss, and doing that for 5 years, and then going off and being a jobbing actor for the 25 odd years that I did that, and then and having that experience and going back into a show with very different eyes, being older, being certainly older, maybe not wiser, but just with very different expectations and experiences, and the way you handle it as a jobbing actor, appreciating the job a lot more, not buying into all the nonsense that can be associated with soaps and telly in general. So for me, so long as I'm working with good people and I'm getting good stories and I'm having a good time, I'll work anywhere.
Great. Okay. And finally, you made it to Edinburgh.
I did.
Will you make it to Blackpool? No,
I like what you did there. I don't know. I've only had one group rehearsal so far.
You all know that Kellie's going to be in Strictly this season, so watch on Saturday
I'm going
night.
to have a good time. I'm going to have a good time. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to enjoy it while I'm there. No pressure.
You're under instruction from your executive
I
producer.
know.
All right. Listen, I want to thank our panel so much for joining in, being open. I mean, we could have done with a few naming of names, couldn't we? But we'll forgive them. Can a round of applause and thank you for our panel.